Yo, what up? Josh Rubin from East West Selye Performance. Today I want to talk about how to lose weight fast. Not. This is the problem. If you scour and search out all the gyms out there, if you look at all these different dieting plans, all the different infomercials, everyone's talking about how to diet and how to lose weight fast. Well, that's a problem. Because if we really look at this, most people that are dieting, you look at the shows that are out there, Biggest Loser, all these different things, everyone's decreasing their calorie intake. Now, a calorie is a unit of measure of energy. I should say unit measuring of energy. So basically, we're decreasing our energy intake, but at the same time, we're increasing our energy demand or caloric demand. So on one end of it, we're actually decreasing our caloric intake or energy intake, but we're increasing our energy demand. That'd be equivalent to basically trying to drive across the United States and saying, well, I'm not going to put a lot of gas in my car because I want to actually, obviously a car can't lose weight, but that's essentially what's going on in the human body. And there's a huge problem with that. One is the body's primary source of energy is glucose. Glucose is sugar. So we have all these people actually on these high protein, low carb diets, and the very thing that their body actually uses for energy, they're actually not taking in, which is a huge problem in itself, and another 10 other YouTubes that I could do. Now, if we look at this, this is a problem because what we're doing is the demand for energy exceeds the supply of energy. So what happens is the body says, well, I need to survive. There's a short-term stress going on and I need to survive. So what the body does is it actually sacrifices long-term health for short-term survival because the body needs to survive. The body is a system of autoregulation. It is designed to adapt. That's what it's designed to do. It's a pretty fascinating machine in itself. But the problem is, if the energy's not coming in to adapt to these metabolic demands we're putting on it, then the body actually starts to feed off itself instead of the foods and the nutrients that you're taking in. Two of the main culprits in this, of course, we have other things like the hypothalamus pituitary, ACTH stimulating cortisol, and yada yada yada. But the two main ones we should talk about in a simplistic sense, if we're not meeting our metabolic demands of taking in that energy, but we're increasing our energy demand, is adrenaline and cortisol. Now, adrenaline basically initially looks for stored glucose, typically in the muscles and the liver. Now, that's even if you have stored glycogen in your liver, you're eating the right foods, you don't have biliary stasis, you're not estrogen dominant, and you're actually detoxifying estrogen, you don't have bacterial overgrowth affecting the liver and so forth. So that's even if you have stored glycogen. So adrenaline initially mobilizes glucose from the liver and muscle stores. The problem is, once that is used up, if there was any there in the first place, it'll actually use fat for energy. And there's a problem with this because using fat for energy is not our primary source of energy, and it's very inefficient. So what the body does is it uses tons of resources to actually use this fat for energy, basically 3 times more of the resources, especially oxygen, to create energy, but it doesn't create as much. So it's using so many resources to create energy, but in the end, using fat, it doesn't create as much. So this is a huge problem. Now, if we look at some of the downfalls of too much adrenaline production, this is what we typically see. Now, adrenaline isn't bad. We need adrenaline. It keeps us alive. It keeps us in that survival mode if something goes wrong, because our body needs to adapt. It needs to keep us alive, because if it didn't, you would essentially die if the nutrients weren't coming in. So the body goes, well, if I'm not getting nutrients, I'm going to actually start to eat myself and mobilize stored glycogen, or from muscle tissue, or from fat, to actually produce more glucose so it can actually have the energy that it needs. Now, typically adrenaline, you'll typically see people with a high pulse, a high morning pulse, 85, 90, or I should say above 85, 90, 100. They wake up with a high pulse. They have heart palpitations throughout the day. You'll typically see a lower metabolic rate, meaning a lower body temperature below 98, below 37 Celsius. A lot of the times with adrenaline, you'll see cold hands and feet, cold nose, because what adrenaline does is it thinks about survival, and it wants to bring blood to the brain, to the central nervous system, to the center of the body, and to the musculoskeletal system, or more of the muscles, because that's what we need to survive. So it cuts off circulation to things that essentially are not that important to survival, one of them being the skin and the extremities. So it actually causes vasoconstriction to the skin and vasodilation to those other areas of the body. So if you are hyperadrenaline, you'll typically see cold nose when you get hungry, heat production goes down, blood sugar fluctuations, and cold hands and feet. A lot of the other things we see is adrenaline actually acts directly on the sympathetic nervous system, so we'll see people constantly be in a kind of anxiety, restless leg, a really kind of hypersensitive state, even at rest. You know, they can't quiet down, they can't slow down, they're really restless, really anxious, things like that. Another thing that adrenaline can do in excess is it actually can decrease the conversion of T4 to T3 hormone. Now, T3 is actually needed in the cell to increase our metabolic rate, increase cellular respiration, to upregulate the immune system, upregulate the digestive system, and every system in the body. So if we decrease thyroid production, we lower metabolism, and we put our body at more risk for developing diseases such as osteoporosis, diabetes, cancers, and things like that. Now, another hormone we want to think about involved in this is cortisol. Now, ACTH actually stimulates cortisol. Now, the problem with ACTH is when we're releasing it in normal amounts, it's really not that bad because it actually promotes glucose uptake, which we want. Now, if you're eating a diet high in unsaturated fats, that's going to actually block the glucose uptake, which can actually keep cortisol going, glucagon going, and create a hyperinsulinic situation such as diabetes. The problem with ACTH in excess, just like cortisol, it actually increases free fatty acids in the blood. It can actually cause demineralization of bone. It can cause basically catabolism of muscle tissue, increasing basically lipolysis, where we get free fatty acids, we get tryptophan, the conversion of serotonin in our body. We get PUFAs released in the bloodstream, which bind free radicals, making them more toxic. They're kind of attracted together. What else? We get, going to go through my list here, we get increased sodium retention, or actually increased water retention in the cell and loss of sodium in the urine anytime we get hyper secretions of cortisol, like hypercortisolemia. We get demineralization of bone, leading to osteoporosis. Excess cortisol production, or cortisol actually regulates part of the immune system, Selye, in the gut, but excess cortisol production will actually downregulate Selye, downregulate the immune system, and put you more susceptible to disease and autoimmune diseases. It can actually block thyroid production and cause the overconversion of T4 to reverse T3, leading to euthyroid-like symptoms. It can actually slow digestion and slow gastric emptying. It can delay the healing process. It can actually cause the oversynthesis of progesterone into cortisol, so we end up with hormone imbalances. I mean, the list goes on. It's completely endless. So if we're not getting our demands into our body, if we're not getting the supply of glucose or the supply of energy, and we're increasing our energy demand through working out and doing the wrong types of working out, the second hormone that's going to be released in excess is cortisol. That's why most people are actually, when they're working out, they're actually breaking down muscle tissue and breaking down bone, and they end up flabby, and they say, well, I'm not toned and I'm not losing weight, yada, yada, yada. It's because they're actually pushing their body into a catabolic state. And you can see this because 30 minutes after you work out, just take your body temperature, take your pulse. If it's super low, then you're actually in a hyperadrenaline, hypercortisol state. And everything that you did in your workout is being negated because you're in a catabolic state. So now I just talked a lot. Hopefully you understand the basic premise of this. If you decrease your energy intake but increase your energy demand, that really actually makes no sense. You push the body into a survival state. You push the body into a stress state. It says, well, the nutrients aren't coming in. I'm going to release hormones to break my body down, which in excess basically halts all systems in the body and leads to disease. So think about creating environment internally and externally. Thinking about preventing disease. Think about supplying your body with the right types of carbs, proteins, fats, the right ratios of carbs, proteins, fats, the right frequencies during the days to modulate stress. So you can actually modulate the external environment in your life and the internal environment to downregulate these hormones and actually create an environment where you can actually, I should say, regulate short-term stress and create a life where you can actually have long-term health. So hopefully you enjoyed this YouTube clip today. I'm out of here.